President Trump first spoke about the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and then Senator Lummis came out with her bill, and she introduced her bill that kind of backs that up, but actually took it a whole step forward. A lot of critical things are in place to be able to get extremely powerful legislation like this through.
Today's episode is brought to you by Akash Network, the world's premier decentralized compute marketplace. Check out Akash to buy and sell computing resources securely and efficiently. Purpose-built for public utility at akash.network. Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Coinage as we are continuing to sift through the election results here. Huge implications for crypto as Bitcoin trades to an all-time high, and excited to have back on the show with us today the Digital Chamber founder, Perianne Boring. Perianne, great to see you.
Hey, Zach, good to be here.
Yeah, thank you for hopping on, because it's been wild to watch all of these races called as we chatted with you just ahead of the election. Obviously, very important who's going to be in control, and everyone was watching the presidency. Donald Trump wins, but so many other things happening now, and now huge questions about what the Trump administration wants to do about crypto, to influence crypto. And also, we should start by saying happy birthday to Perianne Boring. It's your birthday today. Thank you for coming on your birthday.
Absolutely. We're celebrating extra this year.
Well, there's a lot of reasons to celebrate. As I think all of our viewers know, you've been extremely active in kind of pushing for smart policies when it comes to crypto. And I don't know where to start with all of the wins stacking up now. We're still waiting to see how the House goes. But what's your immediate reaction to kind of how these races went?
I mean, it's really been amazing. I know, Zach, last time we talked, which was just a couple weeks ago, was when the Digital Chamber, we released our national survey where we learned all about the crypto voter bloc. Who are these single issue crypto voters? What does their profile look like? Where are they located? What's their demographic? And what we found was, to me, it wasn't surprising, but I think that the numbers really just showed how powerful this community is. And we really backed that up at the polls this week as well. But as we had shared previously, 1 in 7 active voters are in the crypto voter bloc, meaning crypto is a determining factor for who they're going to vote for at the polls. And what we saw this week was absolutely amazing. You just had the House race up. We still don't have all the House races in, but we are analyzing those in real time at the Digital Chamber. And we're projecting that we're going to have around 250 pro-crypto members of Congress, which is incredible. I mean, that is a majority. And it's to go in just a couple of years from being a community that's been sidelined and silenced and discriminated against and told we're nothing but criminals and drug dealers and money launderers, to go from not only just flipping the narrative, but having overwhelming bipartisan support across the aisle, across all chambers. It's beyond an accomplishment. And there's, a lot of people who have played, a big role in helping educate our policymakers. And, the community did an amazing job this session, getting out, being active, making their voices heard, which is exactly what we encourage the community to do. And that hard work has paid off. So we're very excited. And the sky's the limit at this point on what we can achieve. And I think we'll have a whole reset for crypto here in the United States. That's going to be very, very positive for our community and just for the American people in general.
It does seem that way. And obviously, again, same with crypto and the rest of the kind of the Coinbase Fair Shake squad was looking at a lot of these races. They had their tracker as well. It's not just kind of breaking down the House, but it's also the seats won in the Senate, to your point, in terms of pro-crypto legislators now going to be heading to Washington, D.C. But I think the bigger questions people are asking now, Perianne, are kind of what does it mean for a Trump administration this time around? And you can look at, I guess, specific position appointments. You can look at policies to come from those people. You can look at the bills that haven't been decided under the prior administration. But what kind of do you think is the most important early wins to be gained from all this? Is it more the people who are going to be in positions of power, or is it more maybe some of that legislation that could be passed early on?
Well, President Donald Trump is committed to doing a crypto reset in the United States to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the world. There's really 2 agencies that play a big role. There's others, But I think, the agencies most people are focused on are the SEC and the CFTC. Of course, during the Biden administration, we've had a very aggressive regulation by enforcement posture at the Securities and Exchange Commission, led by Chairman Gary Gensler, that has driven companies outside of the United States and has just set this industry back by at least a decade. Our best and brightest are no longer here. They're innovating and they've taken their business elsewhere. So we've got to bring that back on shore. So the SEC, the right person at the SEC needs to be somebody who's going to really clean up the mess that Gary's leaving us, get that agency back in working order in the regulation by enforcement agenda, and provide regulatory clarity on what is a digital asset security and which tokens are not in the SEC's jurisdiction. We need that regulatory clarity from the SEC, and the SEC can do that from rulemaking. And I know they're committed to finding the right leader who will put forward that agenda. So then that puts, on the other hand, the vision of the CFTC and what is the role of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. Well, in previous years, the SEC's really taken the spotlight when it comes to crypto policy, but it really should be the CFTC that should be the leader, because cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are obviously commodities and regulated under the CFTC's jurisdiction, not the SEC's jurisdiction. So the CFTC should be the lead regulator for digital assets and globally, because the US should be the lead jurisdiction for digital asset markets. So I think we will see a lot more focus at the CFTC, and the CFTC has many tools within its own authority to get out and provide that regulatory clarity for our markets to create healthy, robust, deep liquid markets here for the crypto asset space in the US. And then all eyes turn to Congress. And there's a lot to do there as well. But getting something through the congressional process takes a little bit more time, where the agencies do have some tools that they can hit the ground running on day one that will help grow our industry here in the United States.
Well, before we get into Congress, I do want to ask about the SEC, because it wasn't too long ago we had a Hester Peirce, affectionately known as Crypto Mom, on the show back in January, talking to her about kind of the importance of the chair. Obviously, back then there was still a lot of Gary Gensler bashing going on. That was even right before the Bitcoin ETFs were really starting to trade. But we had asked her about her idea of the chair and why that's so important. A lot of people right now are talking about, who could it be, Crypto Mom? Just want to play what she told us back in January and get your take, since I know you're close to those conversations now. But here's what she told us at the beginning of the year. A lot of people are talking about whether or not it should be Chair Peirce. What would you say to that, and the idea of kind of stepping up into that role if a Republican does win? Obviously, Chair Gensler's term is through 2026. But what do you want?
I think one of the things that I want really for my agency and for our country as a whole is to remember that we're not about who the person is sitting in a chair. We're about the rule of law. We have to remember that this is about getting the institutions right so that we can protect people's, we can protect people, but protecting people includes protecting their freedom.
So, Perianne, I know you're close to the talks right now with the transition team and kind of figuring out who these people should be and running the SEC. What's kind of, I guess, the goal there, and what can you tell us in terms of the right way to handle that? Because you just heard you just heard Commissioner Peirce say that it's not all about who's in the chair, but kind of what the agency wants to do.
Yeah, I agree, and obviously I have a lot of respect for Commissioner Peirce, who's really been our flag bearer for the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency community at the SEC, and that's been a lonely job, I'm sure, for many years. But I think she's right. We don't want to have a chair who is all about increasing the SEC's power, that's increasing their own power as a regulator that has their own agenda. They really should be there to make sure we have functioning markets. The SEC has gotten so far outside of its mandate. It's been detrimental to our markets here in the United States. It's been detrimental to American businesses. The legal community has done very well, but probably for the wrong reasons. But having this extremely aggressive regulation by enforcement posture has been bad for the United States. So we need a chair, and we also need commissioners who are dedicated to getting the SEC back on mission, which is providing that security for those markets and getting that regulatory clarity for the cryptocurrency industry.
So we're going to wait and see how that all shakes out. But obviously, I think having a Republican-led Senate when it comes to confirmation is going to be pretty important in terms of maybe some flexibility, depending on where or who, in which direction the Trump transition team or Trump wants to go. But I guess looking at Congress, as you hinted at, you still got potentially Tim Scott now because of that control, maybe leading the Senate Banking Committee. Before it was Sherrod Brown, who just got defeated by Bernie Moreno. You and I talked about that race and kind of the importance of having now Tim Scott in this position potentially. I mean, when you look at the balance of power in Congress, what does that do to maybe getting some of the things across the finish line that couldn't have happened under a Biden administration?
Well, I agree that we're hearing Tim Scott will likely take the chair role of the Senate Banking Committee. So having Republicans lead the Senate, I think, will be helpful for getting legislation done. We have kind of two pieces of legislation that have really taken the spotlight. That's the market structure legislation and the stablecoin legislation. Conversations are not dead. In this Congress, we still have a couple weeks left of congressional session this year. However, Republican leadership may find that if they also take the House, they have the Senate, they have the White House, they may be in a better position to negotiate next year when they have majority in all of those chambers. So I think the likelihood of getting something done just because of those political reasons has gone down. But again, we do need the right people in these leadership positions as well. Crypto is not the only priority in Washington, D.C. It's obviously our priority. So it's important that the people serving in these roles, whether it's Speaker of the House or Senate Majority Leader, the chair of the Banking Committee or the House Financial Services Committee, the Ag Committees in both House and Senate, you need to have members that are dedicated to moving this legislation. If not, then other priorities could take shape. So it's critical that we maintain pressure, that we ensure crypto remains a priority, and we don't get pushed to the sidelines, because that has happened in previous sessions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was interesting chatting with Caitlin Long not too long ago, kind of about maybe, I don't want to use the word fear, but I guess some of her level-headedness when it comes to the idea of just replacing the tops of these agencies might not be enough when it comes to every position lower than the chairs. Really the people working at the agencies, if they need to be bought in as well. And she was kind of telling us that it's not so easy to do that. So, I mean, when you look at kind of like unwinding so much of the attack vectors that the SEC and these other agencies use to attack the crypto industry, like, what do you expect to see play out? Obviously, it's not going to be overnight, I don't think, but I could be wrong. How are you kind of looking at how long some of these things are going to take to fix?
Well, again, I think with the SEC and the CFTC, really, the biggest issue really facing the industry is regulatory clarity. Businesses don't understand what the rules of the road are, and in the meantime, the regulators are coming at them through this regulation by enforcement agenda, which is just terrible for business. It's terrible for investors. It's terrible for the retail as well. So having that regulatory clarity is going to address a lot of the issues our industry faces. And both the SEC and the CFTC have the authority to issue regulations that can provide clarity there. That would bring a lot of relief. There's a lot more to do beyond just providing that regulatory clarity. I mean, we do need to build that regulatory framework, across agencies. And you mentioned Caitlin and her comments on, well, you have all these people that work in the agencies, and you've got to get them on board too. So I think there is truth to that, but you do need strong leadership from the top, setting a clear agenda. And rulemaking is really not that difficult to do. Agencies do it every day. This is an issue we've been asking the agencies to do rulemaking on for quite some time. And some simple regulations would go a very long way. And that's a huge start. And in the meantime, we can work to get the rest of the teams on board with the regulatory regimes that need to be built for the digital asset markets.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, as we started, there's huge implications here when it comes to control, legislation, agencies. Everything is about to be flipped right now. But Perianne, since it's been 2 weeks since we chatted before the election, looking back then, it wasn't too long ago that you essentially had a coin flip in terms of who was going to control the House. If you look at poly market odds, it was essentially 46% the Democrats would control the House. Now just down to a 1% chance as we watch those results shake out. I mean, in your mind, what was the biggest upset of this election when it comes to kind of how crypto stepped in to play a major role?
I think the Ohio Senate race is a huge deal. So Bernie Moreno unseated Senator Sherrod Brown. I mean, I really can't stress how big of a deal this was. There was over 500 million spent in the Ohio Senate race. This was the most expensive Senate race in U.S. history. Senator Sherrod Brown is the current chair of the Senate Banking Committee. He's been in office for over 30 years. I think he served in public office for over 50 years. He is one of the most senior members of the entire Democrat Party, and he was a top figure in the anti-crypto agenda. He was less vocal than Elizabeth Warren, so if he wasn't on your radar, it's more because a lot of what he was doing was behind the scenes. And as the chair of the banking committee, you set the agenda. You get to decide what bills go forward for a markup. You get to decide the topics of the hearings. You get to decide a lot of the witnesses that come in. And we've had a very strong anti-crypto posture coming out of the Senate Banking Committee, and he was the one pulling all of those strings. So make no mistake, he was a big part of that anti-crypto army that really set our industry back. And he played a key role in that. So Bernie Moreno ran against him. Bernie's never served in public office, so he's not a career politician like Sherrod Brown. He actually started a cryptocurrency company. He's a cryptocurrency entrepreneur. He started a small business called Onum that puts car titles on a blockchain. To create efficiency and transparency and be able to verify car titles on chain. And he did that after owning car dealerships. It was one of the big issues they had. They sold so many cars, they had to go to the DMV to get these titles, and it was just a very difficult process to do at scale. So we used the blockchain to create a better process, and that's who ran against him, and he won. So this was a major upset, and make no mistake, this was a very, very clear message that the cryptocurrency industry sent to the Democratic Party that we do not stand with any attempts to restrict access to cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. And we took out one of their biggest leaders. This is a massive defeat.
Yeah, it was a pretty big one, and obviously, as you said, the most expensive race we've seen at that level in American politics. Pretty insane. And we did see Bernie Moreno kind of fire up his crowd a little bit in his acceptance speech and his victory speech. Just want to play a little bit of what he said there as well to give people a flavor of the new incoming Ohio senator. Take a listen.
We got rid of Chuck Schumer tonight, but pretty soon we're going to get rid of another couple people that need to be gone.
Okay, there it was. I don't know if that played necessarily correctly, but he's saying a lot of people need to get gone there too, and I think he's gonna. I mean, a lot of people like the guy. Clearly, like you said, he just took down Sherrod Brown, and for him to come into that position, I think he's riding a wave right now. But Perianne, to your question, or I guess your larger premise about control here, as much as I think a lot of people are excited. I have a little bit of fears in terms of any time you're thinking about power control, gatekeeping, the idea of regulators now still, even though the power balance has shifted, anytime you've got the ability to regulate, there are people who might act within their own self-interest. A lot of people right now are talking about Trump's co-chair, Howard Lutnick, and his connections to Tether, obviously at Cantor Fitzgerald. We could see maybe the premise that regulations could be used, and we saw this with Sam Bankman-Fried before. A lot of people got mad about the idea of him talking about don't let DeFi win. I mean, when you step back and think about maybe the idea of regulation, what are your kind of fears that, yet again, the government could get things wrong? We've seen it time and time again. What are the biggest pieces that you hope the government doesn't get wrong? Reassure me, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's a realistic fear, right? I mean, people who had these agencies, even the president of the United States obviously has tremendous power. And it's critical that even with the best intentions, crypto policy is quite sophisticated. You need to have an understanding of the traditional markets, the existing laws and how traditional markets are regulated. You need to understand how to build a regulatory environment for digital assets. These are bare on-chain instruments. These are very, very new. They have a lot of idiosyncrasies that don't exist in the traditional space. So you need to have that technical expertise. I mean, having the right people is really critical who are going to know how to do this. And quite frankly, there's not a ton of those people out there that understand the ins and outs of the traditional system, plus the ins and outs of this new frontier of cryptocurrency. So having the right people is really, really important. But I know there's going to be a lot of crypto experts all throughout the administration, and that's going to help. The other thing is, I don't know if you watched, but I watched Elon Musk interview on Joe Rogan last night. It was over a 2-hour interview, but I got really excited about the work he will be doing. His Doge agency, the Department of Government Efficiency, where we're going to really work on addressing our debt issues. And cleaning out just the bureaucracy that's totally unnecessary. And that's a huge issue facing our country. I mean, if we can go bankrupt as a country, as Elon Musk puts it, that's a national security issue. So being able to have literally the man who's going to take us to Mars to come in and make our government more efficient, make sure it's operating correctly, that's extremely, extremely exciting. And we have not had any political party that's seriously looked at addressing our fiscal issues and putting into place truly fiscal responsible policies. And
he's going to have a long way. He's going to have a long way to go. That's the problem. He's got a lot of ground to make up.
It will be hard, but we have a savant and one of the most intelligent people of our generation dedicated to fixing that.
I do know you have to run. I do want to squeeze one more question before you have to run, and that is, of course, looking at Senator Lummis's calls to build the Bitcoin reserve that Donald Trump promised on the campaign trail. I just want to ask you before we let you go, Perianne, how realistic do you think it is that we get the Bitcoin strategic reserve now that Republicans could have control across the board?
Well, so if you remember at the Bitcoin conference, President Trump first spoke about the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and then Senator Lummis came out with her bill, and she introduced her bill that kind of backs that up, but actually took it a whole step forward. So through the executive powers of the White House, the president, Donald Trump, can create that Bitcoin strategic reserve. And that's what he was committed to doing. And what he said is, we're not going to sell the Bitcoin we already have. And remember, the United States government has billions of dollars of Bitcoin from seizures, from law enforcement efforts. So he's saying we're going to take that and we're going to put it in a reserve, and we're going to hodl it. We're never going to sell it. But what Senator Lummis would like to do is to take that a step further and not only don't sell our Bitcoin, let's buy more. She wants to buy 1 million Bitcoin. And then that Bitcoin would be set aside for the only purpose would be to pay off our debt, which I think is really one of the few realistic plans that have ever been put forward to actually address our debt issue. So this will need support to get it through Congress. But if Republicans take the majority, which they're projected to do in the House, we already have the Senate and the White House. A lot of critical things are in place to be able to get extremely powerful legislation like this through.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch, and clearly, as we said, everything basically flipped here. So a lot to look forward to as far as crypto legislation is concerned in the year to come and term to come. Perianne Boring, the founder of the Digital Chamber, appreciate you coming back on. Thanks again, as always. Lovely to see you, and good luck with everything as you kind of work with the teams in power. And happy birthday, by the way. Happy birthday. Enjoy the celebration. All right, thank you to Perianne, and thank you to everyone else who's been watching with us. Per usual, you can head to Coinage.media to catch the biggest headlines in crypto. For everybody here at Coinage, I'm Zach Guzman from Perianne, signing off. Thanks again for watching.